Hello everybody. Right, back to what we like, which is LEDs. I'm going to have a look at this SmartShow NetWS-340 dual universe pixel driver. Bought it from SmartShow, so this isn't a sponsored video or anything because I bought it with my own pennies. It comes with a USB lead. Comes with some instructions which are very, very good. I'll come back to those later. And this is the controller itself. So what we've got here is a Ethernet connection in. We've got two cables coming out, and we've also got a USB plug-in there. On the outside, we've got a sticker that says Dual Universe Pixel Driver, the default IP, which is 192.168.1.200. On the other side, we've got the SmartShow Web Site. Bottom is just blank. And here, this sort of oblong here, is where it gives you the information about what's going on. So let us power it up, because that's what we like doing. I'll switch the big lights off for a minute. And we'll plug it into the USB, and then we'll see what we get on the display. So I hope you can see that all right. 192.168.001.200, and then it says A, and that's waiting for information to come in. So do that again so you can see it. There we go. Right, I'm going to put the big lights on, so stand by for a flash. There we go, big lights are on. Okay, so what does this give us? So we can use the software Jinx, which gives us what's called ArtNet, and the ArtNet protocol allows us to power LED lights through these cables. Now, we'll come to powering them later on, powering the LEDs, but one thing you can do about this controller is you can power it from the USB as we've seen, but you can also put 5 volts down here on this cable here. You'll see where it's marked 5 volt max power, and actually power the controller through the LED wire. You can only do it on that one side. So the reason why we've got two outputs is it can drive two lots of LEDs, or two universes, which is about up to 170 LEDs if it's RGBW, which is red, green, blue. And the RGBW white, RGBW is the 4-channel ones, which case it'd be less than 170. And I can't remember what that number is, but I shall find it later on. So the instructions are here, quite good instructions. Let me just zoom out a bit, sorry, that way, there we go. It gives you an example of how to connect your LEDs up. Gives you a list of the parts supplied here, gives you the specifications, shows you about power, which is just here, and the Ethernet connection there. On the inside, it gives you the information about how to configure it. You can do it in the browser mode. There, it gives you information about how to connect to the network there. And it also shows you if you wanted to use a serial connection, which I will show you. I will go through all this later on. And at the bottom here, it does give you an example of how to connect it to the software and do your first animations on there, which is quite good. On the back, it gives you some more information. There's what I was saying about RGBW. So that gives you the, it's 128. More information about the networking, software compatibility, how to get upgrades, etc., etc. So some very good instructions that come with it as well. But I'm going to talk you through how to connect it up. So hopefully you'll be able to use my video alongside the instructions. First of all, let's just talk about power. Now, I'm going to be using this transformer to power the LEDs. LED strips are here, which I'll talk about those in a moment. This is a 20 amp 5 volt 20 amp. Now that may seem a little bit high, but if you think about it, each LED is 0.6 amps each, which calculate that over the number of LEDs that we're going to be using is quite a lot. I'll put a calculation on the screen so you can see. The mains input comes in here, and we have 2 lots of +5 and 2 lots of ground coming out as well. These are very good. These give a nice stable 5 volt output. You can also, there's a switch inside to change it between 110 and 220. Obviously we're in the UK, so we're going to be using the 220, which is what it's set for. So that's the transformer. So let's quickly just talk about the amount of power that we're going to be using. So the LED strips that we're using are these, which are the WS2812b. These are 1 meter lengths that I've got cut here for this project, and in the 1 meter there's 60 LEDs in total, so this is 60 LED per meter. So each LED will consume about 0.06 amps when it's on full white. That's full red, full green, full blue. That gives us a total for all these at about 3.6 amps per meter. Now we've got 4 lengths of these. We're going to have 4 lengths, 4 1 meter lengths of the LEDs, which gives us a total of 240 LEDs. So if we calculate that up, 240 times 0.06 amps is a total of 14.5 amps. That's 14.5 amps if each LED is on full white. Now we're not proposing to do that, and I don't recommend that you do that, but for the power you need to calculate that. So with this being 20 amps, the total amperage for this is 14.5 amps. We're going to be well in with this. Always use slightly more amperage on your transformers than what you're going to use on your LEDs. Now the wire that I'm using for this is some wire that I've got from eBay. If I can zoom in a bit to show you. This is just 3-core wire. Split it open for you so you can see. There we go. So we've got a red cable which we can use for the +5 volt. We've got the middle cable here which we can use for the signal, and we've got a white cable here which we'll use for the ground. And I've got these cut again in 1 meter lengths. So what we'll do is we'll solder these onto the LEDs and give it plenty of slack wire so we can hide the controller somewhere. Quick close-up of the LEDs. You can see that we've got a ground, we've got a data, and we've got a +5 volt. And if you also look, there's an arrow pointing as well, and that's the direction of travel that the signal goes. So the signal goes this way, so we have to make sure that when we connect our cables up, we'll go from the end here. I do apologise, it's just going out of focus. So we have to put the wires on here and go the signal, and the power goes that way. These LEDs that I'm using are waterproof. If you look on the end, if we can get the camera to focus, you can see there's like a plastic covering over the LEDs. I'm trying my hardest to get this to focus for you. Although these are going to be used indoors, it just gives a little bit more protection to the LEDs. Now this means that when we solder onto here, we might have to cut this plastic covering off, but we don't do that, because what these do, if we look on the bottom side of it where the sticky is, there's a layer of sticky on the back. We've also got pads here, so what we can do is cut this last bit of sticky off, which I've done on this one, because the sticky starts there if you look, and then we can solder straight onto the pads here. That means we're not disturbing the plastic on the front, and I think it looks a lot better, particularly if this is going to be shown to people with the wires on the back. So we're ready to solder our wires on now. Now, just double check, make sure the arrow is pointing this way, so the wire goes on this end here. We've got ground at the top, data, and plus 5 volt at the bottom. So when we turn that over, ground is actually the closest to us and 5 volt is the furthest away. I've cut off the bit of sticky on the back here. So what we're going to do is just stick this down with a bit of masking tape. There we go. And now we're ready to solder the wires on to here. We'll just nibble the ends off. There we go. So I'll get my flux, put a bit of flux on the wires, and we're ready to solder on. Okay, so I'm just going to twist the end of the cables together. There we go, let's get our solder. I'm just going to drop a bit of solder on the end of the wires. There we go. Right, on the actual LEDs themselves, let's put a bit of flux on there. There we go. And remember, the ground is closest to us. So we'll put a dab of solder onto here. Here we go. So that's the white as a ground. The middle one is the signal. And finally, the red is the plus 5 volt. There we go. So that's got those on. Try and get it so you can see. And just to double check, so the ground is the white. Turn it over. Get the camera to focus, and the white is the ground. So that's okay, that's all done. And as you can see, there's no damage to the front here either. So that's going to look quite nice when it's actually in situ. What we can also do is we'll put a little bit of heat shrink on. So we'll just get to put it on the end of the cable. Bring it down to here. Now I need it to go over the wire, but not over the LED. So we'll just pop it on there. There we go. the hot air gun. Just gently warm it up. There we go. Turn it over, let's do the other side. There we go, that's got that done. Turn that off, and that's quite a nice protection on the end there as well. Right, let's do the rest. Right, so that's got 2 of the 4 LED runs set up. So what we need to do now is then connect this to the power and the controller. Right, so what we'll do is we'll just give us some cable at the other end of the wire that we're using. Let's just strip those back. Like so. Okay, it's got them done. Now I'm going to use some of these connectors. These are called Wago or Wago connectors. As you can see, I've already written ground on that one and plus on that one. So I'll pick up the red cables from both of these, which is the plus 5 volt. Pop it in there. We'll take the ground, which is the white cable. Twist them together. Okay, I'm going to pop that in there. And the signal cable, we've got 2 signal cables, haven't we? So we'll just leave them as they are for the time being because we need to connect them to the controller. So on our power supply, we've got 2 cables coming out, one plus 5 and one ground. The plus 5 is, on this particular instance, is, if you can see that, it's got like a black line on it. So I know that this one here with a black line on it is the plus, so let's put that in there. And the other one is a ground, so we can pop that one in there, like so. Okay, so now we've got power to the LEDs. Right, if you remember on the controller, one of these does allow 5 volts in to power the actual controller itself. So we can do that now. This is a male connector which goes into the female, so that's male, my apologies. This is female and this is male, which goes into there. That's right. And what we can do, we can connect this 5 volts to this one. Ground to this one, and what that will allow is the power for the transformer to power the controller as well. So all we need to do now is connect this signal cable that's coming from the controller to one of these LED rungs. So twist that together as a temporary connection. And what we need is another connection from here. So let's go to my box of bits. Here's one. Now we don't need the plus 5 volts on this one. So what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to do with that plus 5 volts, because it isn't used, I'm just going to tape it back for the time being. There we go. Strip the cable back. There we go. And we can plug that in. Like that. So the signal goes to the signal cable that's left, which is just there. And this ground can be pushed into one of these as well. So let's join that one onto here. There we go. And that's all the grounds together, the two signal cables together, power going for that, power going to that. What we need to do now is connect it to the software. But just before I do that, just going to get a little bit of tape just to cover these signal cables, just in case they short out against anything. We don't want that. We're going to come back to these later on, so just going to protect them for the time being. And there we go. Right. Okay, now we need to get the laptop out. Right, we're using the Jinx software. I'll put a link in the description down below as to where you can download that free of charge. I've got my TP-Link router here, which I've got my laptop connected to wirelessly, and I've got the controller connected by the network cable, which is just there. Without getting into the complicated side about networking, what I do know is that both the router and the controller are on the same IP address range. Now what I mean by that is that if we look at the IP number here for the laptop, it's 192.168.1.100. The default gateway, which is the router, is 192.168.1.1. And if you remember, on the controller, the default IP on the controller, which is written on the side here, is 192.168.1.200. So what I think we need to do now, I'll just pop that there for the time being, is switch on the transformer, and that should give us power to the controller, which it does. Now I'll just do that again so you can see. Switch the power off, switch it on again, and you'll see 192.168.001.200. So that's the IP of the controller, and we can test that by using a command called ping 192.168.1.200, and as you can see, I'm getting a reply back from the controller. So we know the controller's connected, we're on the same range. Right, what we need to do now is set up the Jinx software. The way that's done is we go to Setup on the top there, and first of all we need to set the matrix options, the dimensions. Okay, so in our case the width Remember, it's 60 LEDs per meter, so that's 60. The height, now although we're only using 2 rows at the moment, the minimum that Jinx can do is 4, so we're going to have to leave that as 4. We can't have 2. It won't accept 2, although you let you type in 2, but that could be for 200. But the minimum it'll accept is 4. That's it on that page. We just press OK, and you can see immediately the display has changed to represent the 60. Next thing we need to do is tell it what the output device is. So we'll add, and we need to untick this box that says broadcast multicast. Untick that. Make sure the drop down options on here is set for ArtNet, and then we type in the IP address of the controller, so 192.168.1.200. Now this is going to be using both the outputs, which is 2 universe, but the universes start at 0, so in this box we'll leave that as 0, and we press OK. Then we need to add the second universe in, so we do the same thing, untick the word broadcast, type in the IP number 192.168.1.200, but this time we're on universe 1. And there we go. The rest of it you can ignore and press OK. So here we've got the controller, which is the same IP, and we've got universe 0 and universe 1, which represents the 2 outputs of the controller itself. And when we've done that, we press close. The final thing we need to do is set up what's called an output patch. Now this is so the both the controller and the software knows what information or how many channels that the LEDs have. So as you can see, we've got 4 rows even though we've only got 2, and we've got 60 columns going across. So we click on fast patch. The dimensions is 60, and we're going to do the first row, so it's 60 by 1. The patch mode, now this is usually used for when they're doing matrix options, but this one will just leave us line wise top left. The RGB order, now I know on 2812s they're actually GRB, which is green, red, blue, so we'll select that. First channel is 0, first patch device is 0, and then we press OK. And you can see that now the top row has changed colour. Double click on line 2, and then we can do fast patch again. So it's 60 by 1, line wise top left, which is fine, GRB, which is fine. Now first channel says 180, we need to change that to 0, and we need to change the patch device to number 1. So this is, we've already patched universe 0, we're now going to patch universe 1. Press OK, and you can see that the second line has now changed. And we're going to push close. The last thing we'll do is we press start output, which is just there. Now on our controller, you can see now it's starting to flash A. Now that means that it's now receiving data. Although our LEDs aren't doing anything, our LEDs are just sat here at the moment waiting. The device, the controller, knows, because we've told the software to start outputting, which is just there, that the controller's now, okay, something's happening, I can receive the data. So let us just change the position of the camera and then we can see the next bit. Okay, so what we're going to do now is on the channel 1, it's set for non-blackout at the moment. We're going to press the drop down on that and go for colour scroll. And as you can see on the screen, we've got colours going from right to left. If we pan out from the camera, you can see that our LEDs are now doing exactly the same thing. And the controller is flashing away, so that's receiving data. The power's going to the LEDs, and the signals are going to the LEDs. So we know everything is working. Okay, let's just pop back to the software. And we're now going to change that to simple colour. And you can see that that's now all gone red. Now this is an easy way to check to make sure that you've got everything wired up right, particularly when you're patching. So press the little edit button, which is just there. And we've got the red channel turned on at the moment. And all the LEDs are red. So let's knock that back to off, and we'll put the green channel up, and we can check to make sure that the LEDs are green. Knock that off, and finally the blue channel to make sure the LEDs are blue, which they are, so that's okay. So that's just a quick way to make sure that you've got everything set right. Okay, let's go for a different one then. Let's go for plasma. Now, as you can see on here, it's a bit of a swirly sort of image. And if we pan out to the LEDs, they're doing the same thing. Now, if you was watching carefully, you would have noticed that the last 4 digits, the last 4 LEDs here, aren't working. So all the LEDs up to there are working, but the last 4 are not. So we've got a faulty LED. What happens is if that LED goes faulty, all the LEDs after that won't work. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this whole row from our project, replace it with another row, and at the end of the video I'll show you what to do when you get a dead pixel like this. We'll take that out and we'll replace it. But just for the time being, I'm going to replace the whole strip just so we can continue with the video. Right, so now we've got 4 strips of LEDs all cabled up. Here's one of them. So we've got the cable in place, we've got the end that we're going to connect to our controller. We've got it, there we go. We've got it soldered onto the back of the LEDs. We've got a heat shrink on it ready to go. So that's all there. We've got 4 of those ready to go. So what we're going to do first of all, we've got the power turned off at the moment. We've got the feed coming out of the controller, but the one where you can backfeed the power. So let's take the red cable, the positive. Make sure we've got the right cable on our power feed. We can put them 2 together. Like that. Right, let's carry on. Sorry about that, I had a quick phone call. So we'll put the positive in first of all, get that in, and then the next thing we'll do is the ground feeds, which is the white ones. So let's get that one connected up. Like so, and we're now going to get another connector because we're going to use that for the signal cable rather than using tapes. Let's pop that in there. Okay, so we're only using one side at the moment, so the other side is not connected. Let's get 2 of our LED strips. There's 1. There's 2, and we're just going to do the same thing. We're just going to connect the white cables together, which is the grounds. There we go, put that in the grounds. We're going to connect the 2 red ones together, which is the plus 5 volts. And we put them with the plus on there. And we've got a signal cable. 1, get the other one. 2, there we go. Connect them 2 together and put that in there. So there we go. So again, we're only using one side, the other side's just pushed to one side at the moment. We've got the 2 grounds, 2 pluses and the signal together, as well as the power from the transformer. Okay, so let's switch that on and wait for that to boot up. There we go. And we have two lots of strands working absolutely fine. So we'll put them down to one side and we'll turn the power off. There we go. So we'll leave them connected for the time being. And what I'm going to do now, just move some of these wires out of the way. There we go. And we have the other two strands. So let's get them out. There we go, that's them. All right, let's start off with the grounds. So we have the white cables, which are the grounds. Connect them together. Put that in there. And the two red cables together, which are the plus 5 volts. And we can put that in there. There we go. And the two signal cables. I'm just looking around my bench, I can't see another connector on my bench. Okay, so we'll just have to put them together like so. And the last thing I need to do, just with this last earth here, just need to pop that in the ground as well. So let's choose one of those. Put that on there. So all the grounds are together. No, that hasn't taken. Let's try that again. No. Right, let's try that again. There we go, that's better. Okay, so we've got the 4 strands, we've got all the grounds together, we've got all the 5 volts together, we've got the 3 signal, that's 1 from the controller and 2 from the LED strips in one of these. I haven't got another connector, I'm going to have to disappear and find one, so that's all the signal cables there. Let's just pop a little bit of tape on there for the time being, just to protect that. There we go. Okay, let's turn it on. Okay, so we turned it on, wait for that to boot up. Right, so we have now 2 strands here, that's 1, that's 2, in colour, and we also have 2 strands here as well. Now these 2 strands are running from one of the signals, so they're the same. These two strands are running from the other one, so them two are the same. So if I change the pattern on Jinx, for example, so let me do that now. There we go. So now we've got a flashing light. So these two will be flashing the same, and then these two will be flashing the same. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to now lay these out flat so you can see them fully and not just scrunched up on the bench here. Right, we've moved out of the shed and into the kitchen. So here we have our router, we've got our power supply here, we've got our controller there which is receiving the data, going to our connections here, and then finally to the LEDs which are here. So as you can see, we've got two outputs from the controller going to two strings here and two strings there. And that's what my friend wanted, and that's what he's going to get. Right, we're back in the shed. So we've got our controller here. We've got a 5-volt connection, and we're going to plug that into the USB at the side and let that boot up. So we go 192.168.001.200. If we go onto our laptop and go into a command prompt, which is just by pressing the Windows key and typing CMD, we can type ping, P-I-N-G, 192.168.1.200, and we get a response back from the controller. Okay, and in the browser we type 192.168.1.200, and it gives us the configuration page. So let's quickly just run through what all this does. First of all, we've got the IP number just there, which is currently set for 200. The subnet mask, I would leave that as it is for the time being, unless you really know what you're doing about networking, leave that as it is. The protocol which we're using, ArtNet, which is just there, although some people use SCAN, so this is a dual protocol controller. For the stuff I do, I leave as ArtNet. Because we're only dealing with the outputs for this only, the net, subnet and uni I'll leave as noughts because we're just dealing with this one controller. The RGB test just here, 1, 2, 3. If you had any LEDs connected, which we currently don't, that would actually output a green, red and blue because that's what we've got in the pixel order below, or red, green, blue if we select that option there, or red, green, blue and white, and then we can use the 4 channels above there and we can do red, green, blue and white with the 4th. This button down here will also reboot it if you press that. So what we're going to do, we're going to change the IP number. So what we do is we change it from 200, for example, we're going to change it to 151, and we're going to press save. And you'll see that IP momentarily appeared there, and that means that it's been in program mode and it's been saved. But at the moment it's still set for the 200 that we was on before. So what we need to do is reboot it. So once we reboot it, as you can see, it's changing, and the IP number is now 151. So let's come out of that. Let's go to our DOS prompt again. Do ping 192.168.1.151, and you can see that we're getting the response back from that. Go back into our web browser, 192.168.1.151, and we get the configuration page. And we've gone back into C mode, which is the configuration on the controller, and you can see that we're on 151 there as well. So that's one way that you can edit the configuration of the controller using the web browser. There is another way of doing editing, so let's have a quick look at that now. Right, the second way to configure the controller is by using it on USB. Now there's two things that you need to do first of all, and I'll put links to both of these in the description bit below. You need to download a universal Windows driver for the USB. That's a CP210. Again, I'll put a link down below for that. And you also need the HTCOM, which is a communication piece of software. It's free, and I'll put the link in below for you as well. So let's get rid of those two. So there's the HTCOM zip file that I've downloaded, and there's the universal driver. I've already installed the driver, and by doing that you just go into the zip file and you just double click on the 64-bit install if your Windows is 64, or the x86 if it's a 32-bit Windows. So just install the Windows drivers, and then when you finish doing that, just unzip the communication software from this file. I've already done that because I've got it on the desktop there. So let's plug in our controller into the laptop. So plug it in, it powers up, as you can see it goes into its usual boot up, which is 192.168.1.151. That's what the IP is set for at the moment. Well, what we do now in Windows 10, you see the start button down the bottom corner, just right click on that and we go up to Device Manager and click on that, and then in here we look for the word ports. So it's got ports just there. We click the little arrow at the side and you'll see that it says USB serial CH340 and then COM4 in brackets. That's the bit that's important. So if I just zoom in a bit to show you that, it says COM4 just there. That's the important bit that we need to remember. Right, so we're ready to connect. So what we're going to do first of all, we're going to take the power out of that. And what we need to do is, this next bit is quite quick, because once the controller reboots, we've got about 8 seconds to connect to it. So what we're going to do is switch that on by just plugging the power in. Don't forget this is plugged into our laptop. 192.168.001.151. We'll go into our software. Select the drop down box, COM4, baud rate is 9600, CR is switched on, and we just type a question mark and then we get the information, and you'll see that the display has gone to a C as well. So we can see on the device here, it's got the device IP of 192.168.1.151, and what we can do is we can change that here. So let's get rid of the question mark. We can type I for IP number and 192.168.1.200. Press enter, and we're still in configuration mode, but I don't know if you saw it just flash with that P, but at the bottom of the screen there it says that the device IP is now that. Let's get rid of the information in the box, type in a question mark, and you can see on here it's now changed it to the 200. Okay, so let's do that again very quickly. So I'll hold it up so you can see. We'll just change it, and we're going to change it to 142. So just typed in I and then 192.168.1.142, and you'll see it flashes the P. There we go, and it says at the bottom that it's changed. And we type the question mark in, and yep, sure enough, it's on 142. And if we want to change it again, just type in I 192.168.1.200. There we go. I actually find it easier to use this to change the IP number rather than the web page. I know it seems odd, but I actually prefer to use this text version. In here you can do other things as well. You can change the subnet mask, you can do the ArtNet or scan mode. You do exactly the same as what you can on the web page. The only difference is that on here you do have an option to reset it to factory defaults, and that's using the $reset command. Now I'm not going to do that on mine because I've already set it for 1.200, which is the default anyway. But you can, that's the only thing extra you can do in the command mode here that you can't do via the web page. So that is the two ways that you can configure the controller. Now you may remember earlier on in the video we had this row of LEDs with dead pixels on it. So I'm just going to set up a quick test. I've got a little controller here. I just use this for testing LEDs out. So let's quickly just get that connected up. I've got a cable here with the plug on the end. Plug that into there. We'll plug this into my desk transformer, making sure I get the cables right. And we'll plug this into the LEDs. Okay, so that's all in place. So let us just something between those so they don't short out. There we go. Right, so let's turn on the power. And so we've got the LEDs working now. And as you can see, the last 4 LEDs here are not working. So I suspect that this one here is dead. So we need to replace this. We can replace all 4, but if you've got a long strip, you don't want to be replacing everything after that. So I'll show you how to replace just this one, and then we'll see if the rest work okay. So let's disconnect this from the power now. Right, get those out of the way. Okay, and disconnect it from here. Right, that's everything out of the way. So all we're going to concentrate now on is just the end, the last 4 of these. So it's that one that we need to replace. Right, first thing we'll do is take off some of the back end. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to be about here. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need to cut across this line here. You see there's a white line on these LEDs. So you see that white line, we need to cut across that white line, and we'll use the clippers like this to do that. Now you have to make sure that we're on the white line, just so you can make sure that there's plenty of room for soldering afterwards. So I reckon about there. That's actually cut it a little bit short, if you notice there, look, but that's okay. I'm sure we've got plenty of, yeah, we've got a pad underneath, that's fine, we can do that all right. And for this one, so it's that way around the way that the lines are going, so we need to chop again on the white line, about there. So that's the dead one, we think. And all we need to do now is to solder these two together. We can do that. So we're just going to gently cut at the back here and get rid of the sticky on the back. Okay, let's clear the sticky now. Put that back on. Okay, now we will get our reel and we'll chop one of the LEDs off the end here. like so. And we'll do exactly the same. We'll take the backing off and we'll get rid of the sticky on the back. There we go, that's all the sticky off there. So, right, so what we need to do, we're taking the sticky off there. No, we haven't. Let's take the sticky off there. There we go. Right. I think what we'll do is we'll put a bit of flux and a bit of solder on those pads, ready to connect up. So let's get a bit of tape on there just to hold it in place. Switch our soldering iron on. While that warms up, we can get a bit of flux on the end there. Clean that up. Grab our soldering iron. Right, that's got them done. Let's have a look at this. So these arrows, don't forget we've got to go by the arrows, and this is the end, so the arrows should be pointing that way. So on here you've got the arrows there, if you can see that, and they're pointing to my right, so we know it's the right way around. So, oops, a bit too much flux there. Don't mind a bit of flux, but that was a little bit too much. Right, see if we can get a bit closer for the next bit. Right, I've zoomed in a bit so you can see what's going on. So we're going to just check underneath, so the grounds are together, the arrows are pointing the same way. Just going to put them two together like that. We've got solder on both sides. Being a bit awkward. I'm just going to melt the solder so the two sides join up like that. Going to let that dry, and then we'll do this side. There we go, and then finally do the middle. Now there we go. So them have now joined up. Sorry, was my finger in the way throughout the whole of that? I do apologise if it was. Right, now we know that's okay. Before we go any further, what I'm going to do now is do a quick test on the LEDs, just to make sure that the one that we fitted in is actually working. Right, same setup as before. We've got our little tester in place, wired it in. So let's have a quick look to see if this end one is now working. Switch the power on, and there we go, so that's working okay. Right, so what we need to do now then is to add the other three in to make our complete set. Again, we're just going to double check the arrows are pointing the right way, which they are. We just need to stick a bit of solder on there, so on the ends, so let's just put that on there. A little dab of flux. There we go, let's got them done. Same thing here. Let's get a bit of small dab of flux. Get a bit of solder on. There we go, and then we can marry these two up now. Again, I'm just double checking the arrows, making sure they're the right way around. Get rid of a hair that's on the bench. Hold them together. Hope you can see that all right. So we're going to marry this one up to there, like that. Now it's slightly moved actually, so it's not quite in the right place. I need to separate them again. Right, I think I need my magnifying glass for this. Just a moment. Right, got my magnifying glass out now, so I can actually see what I'm doing. It's got the middle and the end, and I think we've got a little solder bridge in the middle of there, so let's see if we can just, no, let's just get rid of that. Got quite a lot of solder there, so you can get rid of that blob of solder. There we go, let's got rid of that. And see if we can just solder these up again then. That's the middle one, and that's the end one. There we go. Perfect. Let's got them done. Right. Again, let's just check it on the power. So zoom out a bit. Put the power on. There we go. All the lights are now working. So yeah, so that one there was in fact faulty. So we've replaced the middle one there, and everything carries on. Brilliant. So there you go. That's how to replace one in the middle when you've got a faulty one. I'll just zoom in a bit as well so you can just see. You actually see on the underside, it's quite easy to see well soldered, and on the top side you can see just a line there and there, but it doesn't look any different to what's actually supposed to be there. There you go.